Coordinated Committee. Deputations, petitions, presentations, and public meetings. We have Mr. Lance Vane from 16 Pacini Drive joining us today. Who would like to?
Thank you.
Mr. Vane will be making a presentation regarding his 4x multiplier water billing issue.
I want to thank you all very much for taking the time today to see me. What I'm actually in here to see you in reference to is a water bill in reference to for 16 Pacini Drive, Wasaga Beach. This actually came about, started back in, we're going back to 2012 on this one, where what had happened, there was a water bill that I just started, changed address, and with that, the billing hadn't actually changed over. I'm going to try and keep this short, it's 5 years worth of information. So basically what happened when I finally did receive the initial bill to the billing address, there was a bill for, it was just over $40,000 for water on a property that, now that we're using metered billing, my actual billing rate is about $2,108 a year. And what it was that there was a request to put a meter in place, which I wasn't aware of at the time. Once we did kind of find out about it, I've been working with the town to try and see if we can deal with the 4x multiplier. There was a credit done at one point because initially what was happening was we were being billed a flat rate, and on top of the flat rate was the multiplier. There was an adjustment made, which ended up taking the bill down from $53,000, I believe it was. Sorry, $50,016.93, and there was an adjustment made of $22,000 to take it from the flat rate to the metered rate. What that didn't deal with though was the 4x multiplier that had been applied on top of the 15% interest. So what's basically happened is we've gone from having a tax bill, because it was transferred over in November 2014 from the water bill to the tax bill. After making some substantial payments on that, and the transferred balance was $35,000. And since then we've had interest applied to it more, where the latest billing, there's a current balance of $53,541.68. Keeping in mind that the bills have been getting paid for both the water and for the taxes, the monthly bills have been paid in full since 2014. And I believe it's actually the end of 2013 we started doing that. So what this really is just taking the initial transferred balance and applying interest, and not applying the new payments towards it. So really what I'm here to talk to the council about today is to see if we can work out an amicable resolution in reference to this 4x multiplier, because really that's where my issue lies. And I mean, I've been quite upfront with the town since the beginning that my goal is to get this resolved. And my goal was to get it paid in full and just make this kind of go away so we can deal with the future, rather than dealing with something that's an excessive billing process at this point. And yeah, that's pretty much I've got the actual figures here for you, and I'm willing to work with you. And I don't know if you've all had a chance to take a look at any of the information that's been provided. I apologize that it is, because 5 years worth of work, there's quite a bit of reports to go through there. Hope I didn't cause too much homework for everyone. But yeah, I'm definitely here more than anything to just discuss if we can work something out, because the 4x multiplier is really where the issue seems to lie.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor Beckholji?
Thank you. Not a question, I'm just curious because this is in our consent agenda later on. I don't know if it's been pulled or not, but I think staff should have the opportunity to maybe explain. So I didn't know if now is an appropriate time, or if it's been pulled, if that would be.
It has been pulled.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and if you have nothing else to add, the item is on the agenda a little bit later, and we will pull it in and have a discussion at that point.
Perfect.
So
That
hang
sounds
around.
great. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, we have no unfinished business, no other agency reports, and then we have the consent agenda. All items listed below will be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case these items will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. The items that I'm aware of that have been pulled are Director of Economic Development and Tourism, beachfront lease for 93 Beach Drive, Unit A, Economic Development Officer, update on the tourism website, the 4 times penalty charges and interest charge on the charges at 16 Pacini Drive, and the accounts for February. Is there anything else anyone would like to see pulled? If not, resolved that the General Government section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the consent agenda, items 6D through to 6F, and that the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, you've heard the question. I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay. So moving on, the first item that was pulled was Director of Economic Development and Tourism beachfront lease for 93 Beach Drive, Unit A. This is the lease from JJBG Holdings, operating as Tim Hortons. So I'm not sure if there's anyone other than myself. No? Okay, and then I will make my comments. I pulled this because there's a recommendation that we reduce the lease rate for a building that we had leased to a business last year. So it was a 5-month lease, and I have a number of concerns that the leases are 5 months, not 5 years. So I think we are a landlord, not a business partner, and I think to lease 5 months at a time on property that we're aiming to lease for 5 years at a time puts us as a community as a huge disadvantage, because 7 months of that year, the tax holders are paying for the storage of somebody else's property, and they're also paying the taxes on that property. So I think to negotiate a 5-month lease, at this point is not a good idea in the best interest of the municipality.
Yeah, in response to that, that's not our decision to make. A tenant makes an offer for a unit. We have the ability to offer or out in given direction to accept offers up to a maximum of 5 years with an option to renew, for an additional 5 years. But we do not require a 5-year lease. Many tenants are coming in with 5 months only. That's their discretion. Oh my goodness, please. So we have no way of forcing someone to do a 5-year lease.
So then the discussion I'd just like to see take place around the table is, should we be looking at 5-month leases? Do we want the taxpayers to pay taxes 7 months of the year for businesses? If that is the case, should they then be moving out at the end of 5 months? And should we be looking for active tenants to move in for the next season? Because it seems like we're giving some businesses a competitive advantage over others. In addition, there's a reduction in the rate that they're offering for this year versus last year. And again, we've had discussions at this table from other tenants that feel that their rents or their lease rates are too high, and there was no appetite at this table to reduce the lease rates. So I was just surprised to see that, again, they're asking to pay less, and we're seriously considering it. Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support you in the fact that I don't believe we should be reducing the rent in this case or any other case for that matter. And I do understand your concern. I would suggest that perhaps we do have some discussion with respect to whether they be monthly or leasely or yearly. As the directors indicated at this point, I guess we have no way to enforce or make them give us any longer than that. But, and I'm okay to leave it at 5 months, but I hear what you're saying, and so if it's 5 months, perhaps you make a good point that, okay, at the end of the 5 months, take your equipment, everything out, bring it back the next year. I would agree with that, because other people are paying to keep their equipment there all year. So I would concur with those 2 items. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Belanger?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just the comment, and I'm not sure of all the details of all the leases, but I mean, an offer can come in any configuration. So someone could offer a lease for 5 months, but actually paying more than somebody else that has gotten the lease for a year. So I think, if we're going to say that it's a minimum a year, then the negotiations are just different. It's a different clause. But I think in this case, the actual money paid was higher than some of the leases that were of a longer duration, but I'm not positive of that. But can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, through Madam Chair, when you get into 5-month leases versus year or multiple years, the issue is taxes, because it gets, you only pay for the period that you're actually in the building. So there is an advantage to the town of having a tenant in there for a minimum of a year. I was not given that direction to do that. I have been given no direction to negotiate leases. I bring forward offers that are presented to me. That's the simple answer.
Deputy Mayor Rutledge?
Thank you. I don't remember the exact discussion, but there was the idea that when we have people in there leasing that we're going to get the year's worth of taxes. So otherwise our taxpayers are picking it up. So I think that there's enough questions around this one. I myself would like to see it go back for staff to continue working with them on. I can't support it as is.
So that would be a motion to refer it back to staff?
So
That's the one.
I believe the motion,
What is- what-
the recommendation's already referred.
Yeah, that's already to refer.
Oh, good.
if I could I ask for some further direction?
Yes.
If council would like staff not to accept 5-month leases, that would be a new direction if you would like us to pursue that. And I will let you know I have a stack of other leases that are going to be coming forward on the next COW agenda. And there are a number of them that are 5-month leases, so if that's a change that council would like to make, please let me know and I will inform those other prospective tenants.
Deputy Mayor Rutledge?
Thank you. Myself, if it's 5-month lease, I think within that lease, we need to get the entire year's worth of taxes. I don't want to see the taxpayers picking up the shortfall on that, and yeah, they got to remove their stuff on the months that they're not there.
Is that related to that?
It is. So in response, I would have to defer to the town solicitor if the town actually has the ability to enforce the collection of a full year's taxes when a tenant is only in there for 5 months. If they're leaving their equipment in there, that's another issue, and that should be an issue of please get your stuff out when your lease expires. But I don't know if we have the ability to collect a full year, so I don't know if the CAO is able to answer that question. I would defer that to the town solicitor.
Deputy Mayor?
I guess my only comment to that would be then we need to get enough rent in that is fair across the board, and including whatever that tax is. I mean, we've got to have rates that the taxpayer's not picking up for these businesses to benefit down there. There has to be a different way. If we have to check with the solicitor, let's check with the solicitor. But at the end of the day, the taxpayer should not be picking up the cost for this.
Councillor Boulanger, I think you were next.
Well, I was, thank you, Chair. My point is that if we were extended for a full year taxes, then they would negotiate what the rental rate was. So it could be split to a certain extent if they come back and rewrite it. As I would ask the CAO, as a town, if we say we want the minimum lease to be a year, I guess we could pass that.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, so that would be the direction of council to say that a minimum lease would be a year. But that's the direction that council would have to.
Councillor Smith?
Yes, I'm gonna put a marketing hat on here, and I'm not being exclusive of the other businesses and what they stand for, but I think having Tim Hortons on the beachfront is a good marketing for future businesses to come in. It shows that we have a well-known name that are willing to be tenants down there, and I think that gives a very good sign that we're starting to attract the name brand. And that's just my thought. When you drive along there, you see, oh, Tim Hortons is here, and so is Subway, so, you know, this is good. Things are happening down here, but that's just a marketing night hat.
Mr. CAO, you had a comment to that, or?
Related, if I may,
Yes.
Madam Chair. Thank you. Not in this particular situation, but I do know in another situation where the town entered into a 5-month lease, the the tenant wanted to test the market. Weren't sure what type of business response they would get. So they felt that this was a 5-month lease would give them a good opportunity to test the market, and then they would make a decision whether they wanted to come back or not on a more fulsome basis. And I think that there's some logic to that in the sense of enticing a business and maybe a little bit of an incentive. So to just do away with a 5-month lease, carte blanche, may dissuade a business from coming in and looking at a potential opportunity. Having said that, though, once that individual has tested the market and they've made a determination one way or the other, I think that then it's, if you're going to come in, then you're going to come in on a full-time basis. So I just throw that out as something that was discussed around the table.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Stockwell, were you next?
Yeah, I just had a question for you, Mr. Ridd. I'm trying to think back as to when we entered into the deal for 2016. Do you recall what time of the year it was?
Sorry, when we,
When we did last year's deal?
What?
The 5-month lease.
oh wait, it would have been similar time to this, I can't
Well,
recall exactly.
it rings a bell with me that when we dealt with this, it was a case of either taking a 5-month lease or having it sit vacant. And I think that was part of the discussion. I may be wrong, but that was part of the discussion, that's saying, well, look, but I thoroughly would agree that if you do that, you can only do it once. I don't think you expect to continually renew it on a 5-month basis. I think if you're coming down to the 24th of May and you got 3 vacant properties and you got people saying, I'm not too sure, but if I could take it for this year, I think that there's an argument to be made for that, but I don't think it's ongoing. But was that the deal at the time?
Through Madam Chair, it was a 5-month lease with an option to renew,
Yeah.
and they've come back in and wanted to negotiate the lease rate.
Okay. So the option to renew would be a full year's lease.
Correct, at the
Okay,
rate that
yeah.
they were at. And
Well,
they've-
that was my understanding at the time. If I may be wrong in my memory, but it was a case of, look, we either do this or leave it vacant. It didn't make a lot of sense to leave it vacant.
Yeah.
But I think that when he's had his opportunity, he knows whether the business is doable, viable, whatever. And I think you either take it or just say no.
Councillor Belanger?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to point out too that we are now March. Starts relatively shortly. We've been negotiating with rules that our council had put in place, and we had every opportunity to discuss 5 months leases and taxation prior year. So it would be my recommendation that if we want to make a change, that it would not be for the 2017 season, but for the 2018 season. Otherwise, we're going to look pretty silly. We've been negotiating in good faith with a number of tenants, and we're going to change the rules partway through. So that would be my position.
Councillor Ego, did you have your hand up a few minutes ago?
Yeah, I did.
Sorry.
I was just wondering if there's some way, because we've kicked this around quite a bit, and it's very confusing situation, because it's kind of a different situation, whereas you're just renting out properties. Here we are, we're a seasonal operation, and for the most part, and until I think we're in a position where it's a year-round position, we're always going to have this headache in front of us. If we were a year-round position, we wouldn't be talking about this. But being a summer seasonal operation right now, we're going to come up with these things because there's going to be operators come in here and say, listen, I'm only going to be here for the summer. I don't think I should pay for the whole winter. We all know that. At the same time, I'd be interested to know how places like the Canadian National Exhibition or other places that are short-term places or beaches, how they handle this situation. I'm sure that there's other places out there that run into exactly the same thing, that tenants only want to have it for the peak season, whether it's winter or whether it's summer. I wonder how they handle this. Is there taxes involved in these situations? That's the problem that seems to be the whole craw here, is the property tax. And I can understand that side of it. I think it's a very good point, but you know, you look at it from the operator's side of it, and the operator says, you know, hey, I'm only gonna be here for 5 months. I'm gonna run my business for 5 months. I'm willing to pay you a lease for 5 months, but I don't think I should be paying for the whole year. When he can't use the building for the whole year. If he could use the building for the whole year, that's a different story, but we're in a situation where he can't use the building for the whole year. And that makes a big difference right there. And it's like anything, I think it's a two-way street here. You have to be fair to the operator, and you have to be fair to the taxpayer. How you come to that agreement, that's a pretty tough situation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Andrew?
Yep, two comments that I wanted to add. Not all of the current tenants, but a number of them are carryovers from when the town purchased the beachfront. A number of those leases were structured where they did not pay property taxes because they were essentially operating for a short period of time during the year. Those folks that are coming in looking to renew their leases, there are a number that are expiring in a matter of days. They're all saying, you're now going to charge me property tax. I now want my lease rate dropped to compensate for that. So in the end, it still amounts to the same amount of dollars flowing to the corporation. The other thing I wanted to put out there for your consideration, we're going to be bringing forward a plan to redevelop the beachfront and create a new downtown. That's going to be coming forward on March 21st to Committee of the Whole. When you're in that type of an environment, there is some advantage to keeping leases to a shorter period of time. It gives you more flexibility. When you lock into longer term leases, it does inhibit your ability to make things happen. I'm not saying that 93 Beach Drive is the first move, because clearly it was not indicated through the master plan. But having shorter leases, there is some advantage to that when you're coming up to being in redevelopment mode. Just something to consider.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, you're next on my list of
Oh, thank you.
speakers.
Madam Chair, through you to Andrew, I was just wondering what a full year lease would cost if we decided they needed a year. And it's something you can come forward with. I'm not asking you to answer that now, but what the difference in cost would be compared to other people. I do appreciate the mayor and your comments about paying for 5 months, and I think we should keep it at what it was. I don't know why we're giving them a bit of a reduction, but I think it's important to have them down there at the beachfront. So I would be in favor of just staff directing, and I think he needs some direction to what he's going to renegotiate with them. So that's what I think you're looking for, is that right?
Correct, and through you, Madam Chair, I anticipate that the lease offer would not change dramatically. The issue is the taxes impact the operator more in a year-long lease versus a 5-month lease. That's the issue that's at hand here. Whether or not this lease is 18,000, 15,000, 20,000, by going from 5 months to a year, it's not going to change that because they can't operate in the current
I
environment.
see, that's
longer.
correct, that's correct. And I think that deserves, Madam Chair, some consideration as well. If the buildings were year-round accessible and usable, it makes a big difference.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Michael, you had a comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out this particular tenant has had almost 6 months to come in and negotiate for this year. I mean, their lease ended last year. I certainly don't feel bad about making a decision now when they've had that much time to come in. I guess I would also, just based on the comments made, that if it is perhaps beneficial to be having these 5-month leases, then maybe we need to be looking at our terms of reference for the Beachfront Management Corp. Because they can tie our hands up to 5 years. So I think if this is a change that's important in what we're going to be making, we need to be looking at those terms as well.
Okay. Any other comments? It sounds like there's support to refer it back to staff with direction. So if we could, your motion to refer it back?
Madam Chair, I think there is a motion to refer it back, and it's dealing specifically with this particular property, but committee has discussed a broader issue with respect to the property taxes for the period of time where the tenant is not occupying a particular unit, and whether the taxes should be paid on a year-round basis or only for that particular period of time. And that's more of a policy issue in terms of how you would like these leases structured. So I would suggest that that if the committee is comfortable dealing with that, to refer back, but also would make a request that staff consider a policy or a framework that council could consider with respect to how these leases are going to be approached going forward, because I think that's what staff are asking for, some direction with respect to this in terms of how you want to proceed.
I wonder if that direction could also be included in the future, the report coming forward that looks at the beachfront from last year, because I know there was a number of requests to not pay taxes for last year. So it's obviously all part of the same issue, and I think it all needs to be dealt together so that we're fair and consistent across the board. And I know we were expecting that at March 21st committee of the whole, so I don't know if it can be incorporated into that, but I think it's one and the same issue.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think one is passed in terms of the last season. I think the other part is going forward. So it's more what I was speaking about is going forward in terms of policy dealing with matters going forward. So they're related, but I think we need to turn our mind to what is the appropriate manner in terms of approaching these moving forward.
Clear? All right, I'm not sure whose hand went up first between flip a coin. Sorry, Mayor Smith.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I don't know that staff are going to take away from this particular discussion any clear direction. And to the CAO's point, I mean, the report does, the recommendation is to refer it back to staff with direction. I might suggest we refer it back to staff to come back to us as quickly as possible with some solutions, 2 or 3 different solutions that council can look at in order to make sure that as we move forward, we have a standard policy moving forward. Thank you.
Councilor Melanche?
Yes, thank you. My question would be, and maybe to the COO, how quickly would this come back in front, and what is our timeline for us to effectively deal with our tenants for this season? Because we have to move fairly quickly. We're in March. And I think the point is our tenants are going to be willing to pay X amount of money, whether it's in taxes or whether it's in rent, is irrelevant. We're going to get the same amount of money regardless of what we decide, or they will walk away from the opportunity. So at this point, if we are starting to make decisions that could impact our ability to have effective leases for this year, then again, as I said earlier, we maybe should be looking to the 2018 season. But if we can bring this back very quickly and bring it in front of council where you're comfortable that we can still manage our lease agreements this year, then that would impact how I would vote.
So this one here, that would still be the lease rate? Because there was discussion about not reducing the lease rate. So it's existing.
And end it there.
The entire thing.
Refer back to staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right now, the way it says referred back to staff with direction to seek a lease rate of 18,000. Well, we're not sending that direction. So if you end it after we referred back to staff to be brought forward.
Back to staff. Direction. So we just eliminate the lease rate and
If I could respond to Councilor Thorne through Madam Chair. The simple answer is this would impact different operators differently. And the reason I say that is a lot of the folks that operate retail units, and there are a couple leases that would be coming forward on the 21st that pertain to those. There's approximately 5 units in play. They need to purchase their goods now. They're out shopping now. And if they don't have a unit locked down, that will impact their ability to open in May. someone like Tim Hortons, I don't know that how much lead time they would need to get up and running. I suspect, you know, a few days with a broom and turning some hydro switches, and it wouldn't take them long. It's the retailers that'll get impacted by this more. So, you know, sometimes I don't know the impact that delaying this will have on having businesses open for the 24th of May. The other issue that I raised earlier, I don't feel comfortable just coming back with a quick report on this. I would like to seek input from the town solicitor. We're into a world that makes me nervous about having tenants on the hook for taxes for a longer period than they may potentially being in a unit, and I just don't know the legality around that.
Just a comment that our lawyer reviewed the initial lease when we sent it out, and there's many leases set up for 12 months, so I would anticipate that it should be fine if it's been checked already.
And the town solicitor reviewed this lease,
Yeah.
and he was comfortable with this one.
Yeah, I think this is just more of a council issue to continue to lease at 5 months when it's the taxpayers paying the balance of the year.
But if I understand, if you're saying that the leases are minimum 1 year, that's one issue. But if it's, you can still have a 5-month lease, but you're on the hook for 12 months worth of taxes, that's a gray area that I can't speak to. I would like.
And I think there, because we're storing their equipment, like, it's a little unreasonable to expect somebody like a Tim Hortons to move everything out in September. I mean, to have to bring it back in every May would be huge in terms of their setup and takedown. So I mean, in theory, they are leasing it for 12 months of the year. They're using it. They're just not actively going in and out of the front door. They're just using it for storage. That's kind of how I see it with the 12 months. Sorry, I see our treasurer has a comment.
Through you, no,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Stockwell.
well, I just wanted to ask a question through you to staff. So, we're really setting a precedent here. Because then how many issues are out there, how many contracts are out there like this? I mean, I still harken back to when we made this deal. It was kind of a last minute deal. You either take this or it goes vacant. And I think the consensus was, well, half a piece of pie is better than no piece of pie. But to be quite honest with you, I thought that was for a 1 year only. But here they are back wanting the same deal for another year and then another year. So we really are setting a precedent. So roughly how many contracts are out there that liken themselves to this situation?
The majority have locked in for longer terms.
Yes.
And anyone that's investing capital dollars and fixing up a unit wanted the longer term, and that's why staff recommended the ability to do that.
So the top of your head, are there a half a dozen?
It's probably less.
So, okay, if there's less, Madam Chair, I think we should be making a decision. You either go this way or we go that way.
Yeah, Councillor Stockwell, there was a couple last year that we renewed for the 1 year to line up their leases because they had multiple properties and they wanted to negotiate a package deal. So I know we agreed on a shorter term for some of them.
And in response, through Madam Chair, one of the individuals who has 3 units, who was lining up leases, they were all coming back on the 21st. They're all coming back at 5-month leases. So if council does not want to entertain that, I have the opportunity to go back now and say, sorry,
Yeah.
we have to look at longer term.
Yeah.
Is council comfortable saying we don't want to entertain that?
Well,
I just need direction.
Dip your toe in once for a short-term lease, but if you come back and you want that building sitting there waiting for you, then it needs to be a longer-term commitment. Mayor Smith?
So what I'm hearing here, Madam Chair, from this discussion is that the minimum is 1 year. And I'd be comfortable to support that. In this particular case, this particular tenant has had 2 years of 5-month leases. This is the last summer was the second summer in place, so they should know whether or not the business is suitable for them to make money or not. I would support a minimum of 1 year. To Councillor Belanger's point, however, I think what we're going to see, you know, we're kind of 6 or 1/2 dozen of the other. We'll see rates come in, I think, at different amounts for lease because they're going to factor in taxes and so on and so forth. And so be it, we take the best lease we can get. That's the market, and it is what it is. But I'd be willing to support direction to staff today to say we're looking for a minimum of 1 year. And then the dollars and cents they're going to negotiate and bring back anyway.
Madam Chair, if that's the motion, I'd be glad to second it.
Okay, thank you. Do we need a motion for that? Or are we still giving direction?
Madam Chair, just, I understand what's been discussed around the table. I believe in February, and the director can correct me if I'm wrong, there was a lease proposal that came forward that was approved by council for a 5-month lease. That was a gentleman that had leased for 5 months last year and had come back requesting another 5-month lease, and that was approved. And it's in the 41 Beach Drive, right beside the Perfect Image store. So is that correct? Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
So that was approved by council for this season. So you've already got one that is going on the next cycle, and they've been approved for 5 months. So that's why I was suggesting that staff be given the opportunity to have a look at this and come back with options for committee and council to consider, taking into account some of the decisions that have been made around the table, and also trying to understand the implications going forward, not only in 2017 but into 2018. I think it would be good to have a fulsome consideration so that this issue is not coming back every time that you're considering a lease proposal.
Thank you. Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do believe the CAO was correct in that, and so I think for this year we've set a precedent, and so then to Councillor Belanger's standpoint, perhaps we should be looking at this for the season 2018 season. If we've already approved it, that lease has been documented and signed, we can't go back to that person now and say, you know, we're changing your lease. You know, we hear all the time that in the interest of being fair and equal to all, we should be doing just that. So perhaps in this case, Councillor Belanger's point is well taken, in that we need to set some parameters, but it'll be for the 2018 season perhaps as opposed to 17. However, I'd like to add that anything we do sign, if that is the direction that gets given here, that it's made very clear to anyone who has already signed a lease for 5 months or will be signing, that in September we'll be looking for you to renew for a longer term, or you will have to remove or you can leave your stuff there, but there's going to be a fee, one way or the other. So we're still collecting the money. If they want to leave their equipment and pay the storage fee equivalent to the taxes, okay, but if not, take it out.
Now, if they were to leave their equipment, are they also not taking that gamble that unit's now on the open market, and if somebody else comes along,
That's right.
it's gone?
Absolutely.
Because I think renewing 5 months, there has to be that incentive for them to lock in. You want to be here every year, then you pay to be here every year. You don't whine and hope that it's.
If I may, Madam Chair, these are the items that we're talking about here that, you know, staff will have to bring back to us in their recommendations and options.
Councillor Blanchard?
Hey, this will be my last comment, but thank you, Chair. Just want to point out, the CAO did say there could be in the future an opportunity where a very good tenant wants to test the market for 5 months. So there may still be a reason to have a shorter term lease for a single year, as opposed to just saying 1 year for everybody all of the time. The other thing is my understanding, and I could be wrong, is some of our buildings are not built to be inhabited all year long. That there are buildings that are not winterized, and so to indicate that if they want to lease year after year, but we haven't made the building inhabitable for 12 months, I think that's another legal question that you would have to ask, because this is you know, you can't say you got to take your equipment out or you can't have accessibility if we're the landlords if the building is uninhabitable, and unless we say that those leasehold improvements are their responsibility. Like, it just gets a little more complicated than.
I'm not sure. Our treasurer has something to add to the discussion.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify on the property taxes, and Andrew was part of our discussions with the COPA and Michael Starr, who is our lawyer. So we did talk to him about you know, can we charge beyond the point of them being occupants? And that's true, we can't. Your lease goes from May 1st, and that was the discussion we had back in, I think, the summer last year, July or August. But it's the way our leases are structured that say it's property taxes. So it doesn't need to be property taxes. It can clearly just be, that's your rental rate. It might be based on property taxes, and I think that was the intention for last year's leases. Now, it was structured a little differently, but I think that's something going forward we can certainly address if we want the property taxes covered, because the reality is the town can only claim a vacancy rebate if that property is actually vacant. So the town does have to pay those taxes. So if we rent it for 1 month or 5 months or whatever our normal seasonal operations would be, we are on the hook for the taxes. So that's absolutely true. So if we change the structure of our lease agreement to say, let's say the taxes were $20,000 and we had a rental rate of $15,000, the rent is $35,000. There's no discussion about property taxes. Then we get out of the situation of, oh, they're not tenants at that time. And I get your point that yes, our buildings are only habitable, or you can only get in them for those 5 months. But really, when you're entering into these leases, they're seasonal. We know it's a seasonal operation. And certainly the Grossies did it the same way, and the guys before that, and the guys before that. They just structured it that you paid your rent, which encompassed property taxes and all their expenses that would be covered. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I think part of the confusion we added to the leases was separating those amounts out. If it was one lump sum, like the previous tenant leases, they know what they're paying up front. They might not like it, they know what they're paying up front. Here's that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was clearly a method to the madness before, and I would agree that, you know, in moving forward for the 2018 season, we have some time to sit down and relook at the restructure of all the leases, and that perhaps it is one flat rate, and it includes taxes, it includes whatever it is it's going to include. And as you say, Madam Chair, they might not like that rate, but that's the rate. And we go from there.
Okay, Councillor Smith?
Thank you. Well, one last comment, Madam Chair. This time, I believe we should do status quo for this year. And two things I guess I want to talk to. But the new management corp will be up and running by this time next year, or earlier, hopefully, in a few months. And I think that's one of the jobs maybe they would be tasked with, is to come up, to review the leases and come up with a lease that makes sense, because they'll be leasing the properties in the future. And that committee could come forward with ideas and suggested changes, which we could run by the lawyer, and then we can approve what the recommendations of the management board would be, unless it's the other way around. But we have to talk about that being in place for the future, and the committee, I think that committee should have some maybe input in what the best way to do this. But I would also like to go back to our original motion to move along the rental for this year for Tim Hortons, and I go back to the original motion and let Andrew go back for the amount they paid last year, and then he can look at the other options. But I think those other options would be for the 2018 time period.
Okay, so then I'm gonna need a mover and a seconder for this referral.
I think we need to get that. Oh, council's the wrong one.
Right.
One, and then we printed a new one.
Okay, so that's the new one. Do you want the original motion?
Thank
there
you.
would
So
be
what I've been handed is the
Yeah.
motion that appears in your agenda package. So if
Okay.
that is acceptable to a mover and a seconder, I would ask that it be moved and seconded
Okay,
and then brought back to the chair.
I'll move that then.
Councillor Eagle, you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, I know we've been kicking this around for quite a while. It's really an interesting topic about how to handle this situation, I find. And I do agree with what the treasurer says and the mayor. I think that if we could say that we just have one lease with a certain amount, and it includes, like the mayor said, the property taxes, everything else, then that there is also a negotiable thing when the person that's renting the place, they're negotiating one thing. They're not negotiating for the property taxes, they're not negotiating for the rent, they're negotiating the price of the actual rental. I think what it does is, where the confusion's coming in for all of us is that we wanna get the property taxes, but we don't wanna make it look like we're here for a 12-month rental, which we can't do. So just come up with a fair amount for the rental and let that include everything.
Yeah.
And I think that solves the whole problem. And
I was just gonna say, I mean, this takes us right back to the beginning of our discussions on these leases. We talked about square footage. If we would have gone with square footage, we would have included all of those added costs. Now we're in a position where all the leases are different, they come forward, some people want rebates. I think the entire thing needs to be looked at before we hand it over to a development corporation for them to do. This council needs to make some decisions moving forward. We didn't do it right the first time, and now we're dealing with it, and I honestly believe it needs to go back, and it needs to come back to this table, and we need to be able to provide that corporation clear direction as to how they're moving forward. Otherwise, we're gonna have a group doing what we're doing now, and it's a problem.
Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make clear that I don't think we've done it wrong. I think we're learning as we go through this, and now we're looking at this situation and we're saying, okay, could we do this better? And there's always room for improvement, and that's what council's doing here today. Committee is doing here today. We're having this discussion as to how we can make it better. And I think that's a positive thing. Price per square foot. You can charge a price per square foot and still have taxes separate or included. So I don't think that would have made a difference. Again, it's about recognizing that we can do it better, make it better, and moving forward in a positive manner, and I think that's what the committee is trying to accomplish today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. I would like to read this motion to move this issue along. Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Stockwell. Resolved that the General Government Services Section of Coordinated Committee recommend to Council that the offer to lease from JJBG Holdings Inc. for 93 Beach Drive, Unit A be referred back to staff with direction. Should I read the entire thing as amended? Because we're actually putting in amounts that we...
It was in the original,
That was the lease last year.
it's in the original motion.
It is, but I thought the discussion at this table said that we weren't happy with a reduction in the lease rate, but this motion says with $18,000, exclusive of taxes, utilities, operating costs, and insurance for 2017. So if we want to take the direction of the discussions at this table, this motion doesn't reflect that. So do we read this one and then come up with an amendment?
I'll defer to Madam Chair, I'll defer to the director in terms of this lease rate. Is this the lease rate that was paid last year? Is
No.
that what's,
No, through
No.
Madam Chair, the lease rate last year was
Reduction.
20,000.
I see.
Yeah.
The prospective tenant has offered 15. My recommendation is 18, given that Beaver Tails is paying 18. I also have an offer to lease on 93 Beach Drive Unit C that will come forward on the 21st for 18,000. So to keep it fair and equitable, I was trying to match what all the neighbors are paying so that it's consistent. If council is not happy with that lease rate, please give me direction as to what lease rate you would like, because I am not in a position to negotiate.
So I think the discussion at this table was that the lease rate should remain constant. They leased it at 20,000
Yeah, it
last
should
year,
be
it should be
20.
20,000 this year.
Yeah, so that,
So procedurally, do we change the motion? Or we just vote on this motion and we either support it at, so the motion reads $18,000.
$18,000.
So if we support this motion, we're approving a reduction in their lease rate?
Correct.
Okay, just so that we're clear
can we
what we're
make
voting
a
on.
friendly amendment?
Could make it proposed, Madam Chair, to the
We can
council. you
propose a friendly
propose an
amendment to change that
Propose an
amount?
amendment.
Yeah, to its current rate 20,000, but that's what they're paying.
There's that.
I cannot support a reduction. We've had other people come before us and ask for reductions, and we've been fairly adamant that no, it's what you have agreed to. I understand that this is a renewal or a renegotiation, but I cannot support a reduction. I could support a friendly amendment to change that to 20, but I cannot support a reduction.
So can a friendly amendment be done through a show of hands? No. But we just pass it off and
No, it's actually, Madam Chair, it's a motion to amend.
it's a motion to amend.
To amend that 18,000 to 20,000.
Okay, so then, if there is support, we will make a motion to amend.
Yeah, so, do you need a second it up? I'll support that.
So that one goes first.
Correct.
Okay.
give me
Okay, so we'll
Good.
just wait on the amended motion if there is a seconder for that motion, which I think there is between
I'll
Councillor
second
Smith
that.
and Mayor Smith.
Can we get a mover for that? I'll move it.
Okay.
Well, while that's going on, could I ask one question, again, just for clarification? We, I know this may open up another can of worms. We have had a couple of tenants come forward asking for a reduction while they are within the term of their lease. That was turned down by
Yes.
committee. When a lease comes due and they're deciding whether or not to come in with a new lease and enter into a new lease with the town, is committee saying that you will not accept a reduced rate coming forward? Because there are 5 leases coming forward on the 21st that are asking for a reduced rate. So if that's committee's direction, I can go back to them before those come forward and say, sorry, council is holding firm. It's an important distinction. Leases are now expired. We're entering into new leases.
Councillor Boulanger, I saw your hand first.
Okay. I think to a certain extent, thank you, Chair, that they need to be on their own merit. Like, I mean, I sit here and saying, a big Tim Hortons sign on the beach, given how many people are on the beach anymore, they're getting $20,000 worth of marketing value if they never opened a store. You know, every unit has different operating expense, a different business model. I don't think it's a one size fits all.
Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It doesn't matter whether it's a Tim Hortons or whether it's Billy Bob or Jane's Cookie Store. It's irrelevant. Each individual operator, and I've said this many times at this table, at the council table, committee of the whole, that it's a business decision. This is the lease that we're looking for. This is the rate we're looking for. We've negotiated. This is the best we can do. And you have to decide then as a business person it's the best you can do. And it'll either work or it won't. It's a business decision that business owners make each and every day. There is a big difference between someone who is in a 5-year lease asking for a reduction and us saying no, than someone who is, used, I guess, maybe a loophole perhaps to their advantage that we can go on 5 months and then try to renegotiate. But at the end of the day, it's the same business. This might be different. I say might be different if this was, the same building and a different person with a different business came along. Again, a business decision would have to be made by that individual whether or not this lease rate worked for them. And if you are in business and you're willing to sign a lease rate that doesn't work and is not going to make you money, well then, shame on you. This is the rate. I think it's a fair rate. And, whether they're in the middle of a lease or whether they're renewing their lease, the rate is what it is. And we have had people in the past come and ask for that. And we have said no. And I believe our rates are fair. So I can't support a reduction, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, and that's why I said status quo. I was referring to that, they pay the same as they paid last year.
I think our motions are just catching up with our comments. Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder for that motion. Okay, so the amended motion reads, moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Mayor Smith. Resolved that General Government Services Coordinated Committee recommend to council that the motion to offer to lease JJBG Holdings Inc. for 93 Beach Drive Unit A be amended to a lease rate of $20,000.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard
Hold on, there's a,
Sorry, just exclusive of taxes, utility, that's still there?
It's, yeah, I'm gonna add all right.
just the 20,000.
It's just the fee.
Okay, just making sure.
I think so.
Somebody does.
Madam Chair, no further questions.
did we need to make a comment about the term or no?
Oh.
There was enough discussion, you're clear?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi,
Opposed.
Councillor Ego,
In favor.
Councillor Smith,
In favor.
Mayor Smith,
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell,
In favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, and 6 in favor and 1 opposed. Thank you.
Okay, and then the original motion was moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Stockwell. Resolved that the General Government Services Section Coordinated Committee recommend to council that the offer to lease for JJBG Holdings Inc. for 93 Beach Drive, Unit A, be referred back to staff with direction to seek a lease rate of $18,000 exclusive of taxes, utilities, operating costs, and insurance for 2017 as amended.
Thank you. And the amendment is to change that figure from 18 to 20,000. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger,
Okay, sorry, I'm confused. I'm
Say yes.
So we already approved 20, so
Yeah, I
we're
just-
As
opposing
amended.
this?
yeah, the
No.
chair read 18, but I just wanted to just clarify that in fact it's been amended, so it's 20. The rate is 20,000.
The amendment was to make it 20,000.
Okay, so this is just the amendment, to
This is
approve the
main-
amendment.
This is the main motion. You just voted on the amendment.
And this is as amended.
Okay.
As amended. This is as amended.
As amended, so
Correct.
in favor, if I voted in favor before, I in favor.
You're not voting in favor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Byfolchi. Thank you. Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along, we have Economic Development Officer who's going to provide a demonstration of the website, and then we will vote on that motion after. You're welcome, Johanna.
Thank you very much for having me. So I wanted to give council, our coordinating committee, an opportunity to take a look at the new dedicated tourism website that staff have been working on in consultation with the Tourism Events Advisory Committee. They've provided a lot of really valuable input into the design and development of this, as well as the Regional Tourism Organization 7, Bruce Grace and Go. So I just thought I'd give council an opportunity to take a look. It's currently in a staging site. I've been working with local businesses that are licensed in town to add their listings and add content, and wanted to provide this committee with an opportunity to provide some input prior to it going live. Staff would like to launch the website officially this month. What will happen is the URL WasagaBeachTourism.com, which currently goes to our town corporate website, will be redirected to this website so that visitors would land on this page when visiting that site. So this is our welcome page. We have videos embedded in here, and the content is able to be changed. All the content and videos are translated into French for a French version of the website in order to serve our Quebec market and our Francophone visitors. Council, or if the committee is comfortable, I'm going to play one of the videos so you can see how it integrates into the site.
This is Wasaga. You gotta be here for the memories you'll treasure the most every year. Wasaga Beach.
And then acknowledgement of our partners that helped with the production of the videos. So there's a number of different categories on the site. There are things to do with some information here and some more videos. And then a listing of all of the operators that are attractions and beaches, shopping, that sort of thing. Visitors are able to condense it and filter it by the type of activity that they'd like to do. So then there's a listing of the activities under those categories. There's also a link to a page dedicated to trails with the interactive map that the town has produced. There's also an area here that people can look at places to stay, and also, again, they're in categories here. And they can click on the category and see the operators in that category. Similarly, there's places to dine, and there is also an interactive map with all of the listings so that visitors can look at the interactive map. There's listings here. There's also some additional areas here where there's a link to other sites around the region, and also a photo bank here where visitors are encouraged to submit their photos, and then we can add them to the visitor gallery here, and then also use them through our social media channels and feature them on the website. So I'll just show you the interactive map. So visitors are able to take a look at where all the listings are. There's a legend here so that they can filter out what kind of activity that they're looking for and that sort of thing. And then there's also a list of all of our town events, as well as the approved events approved in principle. And we're able to update this on a fairly easy basis. So as soon as council approves something or new events been identified, then we can add this to the website. Then there's also the nice feature about this site is that for operators to log in, all of the information that they put into this website, if they want to be featured on the regional tourism website or any of the other microsites like the Georgian Bay Coastal Route or the Heart of Georgian Bay, it's able to be a one place login, and all the information filters out to the partner subsites as well. We also have Google Analytics on this site, so we're able to understand how many people are visiting the site, where they're coming from, and that sort of information, which is really helpful for marketing. Open up for any questions.
Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to congratulate the Tourism Special Events Committee and staff in their cooperation with the County of Simcoe and RTO7 for this website. I think they've done a phenomenal job. We spent a lot of time and effort on it, that's for sure. There was a lot of discussion. And Joanne in particular has done an absolute excellent job at moving this forward. So this is very positive for us, and congratulations to that whole team.
Deputy Mayor McFulch.
Thank you. I'm not very techie, so bear with me. When you say operator login, are we talking local businesses?
Yep.
So anybody who's registered with the town with a business license would be on this site and have access to it?
Yes, so what I've done is I've taken the information from our bylaw department with business licenses and used that as the basis for uploading the initial businesses and listings into the site. I removed some service-oriented that may not be of interest to tourists, but certainly anybody can register for the site. What happens is if somebody is not already registered, they'd go to this page here, where they'd fill in a registration form, which sends me an email. And once I receive that email, I approve that registration. I know that I've received some questions in regards to operators that have multiple businesses or multiple locations. The way the system's set up is that the email is used as the username. So what they can do if they have multiple listings is put in a different email. It doesn't have to be real. It's just a facade for the username, and create another registration. Unfortunately, at this point in the development of the site, we're not able to link all those profiles to one login, but they would have to log in under each listing.
Okay, so it's not a situation though where anybody can kind of go in and update information, maybe something that we wouldn't approve of. It goes through you first.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Belanger?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, congratulations as well. But one of the things that I was interested in is when we bring up our town website, and I know that the tourism website will become more and more popular and known on its own, but today, if you come up to our website, we want to make the very easy for our guests to go to the tourism website. Today, it's not that fancy, and hopefully we take a look at our homepage. I think technically it's effective, but I've been comparing our town page compared to many other municipalities around Georgian Bay, and we aren't maybe as attractive or welcoming or creating the first impression that other municipalities are trying to accomplish. So,
Councillor Ego?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question, if you don't mind, to Andrew. Andrew, I asked you about a month ago about an ad that was appearing on Channel 4 News. And I was wondering if you ever got any update back on that as to who put that ad on there?
No, I'll follow up with CTV.
Okay. Because it was quite disturbing, as I told you. So it was an ad for Wasaga Beach, and I don't know who put it up there. I don't know whether the town put it up there or the M&R put it up there or who put it up there, but it's on the Channel 4 News. Now, since I talked to you, it hasn't been on.
So I just in response, it was not the town. The town has been running some advertising over the winter months with CTV.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to CTV to ask them about that, and they weren't sure, so they were scurrying around trying to find it, and it may have disappeared since then. So, but I'll follow up just to find out what went on there.
Good, thank you.
Any more comments or questions?
Thank you.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question with respect to monitoring the site. Who will be responsible for monitoring the site, and how frequently will that
So I will be responsible for monitoring the site. I'm hoping to update the content on the site. The base content that's there, because it is translated in French, I'd like to keep there so that we have it in both languages. But I'm certainly able to update content and add content to the site on an as-needed basis. I would endeavor to do that seasonally to make sure that the content stays fresh and relevant. And I just also thought it might be helpful to mention, we've been approved for some grant funding from the Regional Tourism Organization as well as the county to undertake a digital marketing campaign that will be launched this month and go through August. We're able to leverage about $40,000 in funding for a contribution of about $2,000 from the town. So I think that that's a very positive opportunity, and the objective of the campaign will be using the videos that have been compiled in concert with the county and RTO to be used on social media and direct people to the website.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It looks good. It'll be nice if that's kind of the first thing people see.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So, the motion reads, moved by Mayor Smith, seconded by Councillor Smith. Resolved that the General Government section of Coordinated Committee receive the update on the tourism website for information. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger,
in favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi,
In favor?
Councillor Eagle,
In favor.
Councillor Smith,
In favor.
Mayor Smith,
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell,
Favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Wonderful. Next item pulled was the 4 times penalty charges and interest. Charge on the charges for 16 Puccini Drive. So move. Okay, if there's comments or questions, I'm gonna read the motion after. Deputy Mayor
I don't know
Mikulski.
who originally pulled it, but I just thought it would be appropriate for staff to explain why these are in place. There was a reason back in the day, and I think it's important that we hear that before, so everybody's understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
If you
Chair.
would like to,
So, this started back when they originally began the metering program, which was, I believe, starting in 2007, 2008. So there was a lot of communication to all residents of the town that we were moving to a metering program, and that in order to be in compliance, you would have to buy a meter. It would be installed. The town paid for the meters on the first go, and the transmitters would be activated. So It was a big change for the town, because as most of you may know, previously we were on a flat rate, and it was a big change, but it was a necessary project in the sense that the MOE and the Safe Water Drinking Act said we need to start metering so that we can conserve. It's all about conservation. So at there's about 10,500 meters now. At that time, there was probably about 9,000. However, we had a small percentage, and I would say about 5% of those that continually were being requested to get a meter. So in 2009, when the meter switch went on, it was very well communicated to the public that if they did not get a meter, they would be imposed a penalty. In the first 2 months of that, it was a 2 times rate. And that lasted until September, I think, of 2009, so it was more than 2 months. And then once the 2 times rate cleaned up a whole bunch, we still had a few, and 16 Puccini Drive happened to be one of those. It turned into a 4 times rate. At that point, the expectation was that people would come in and try and, avoid the penalty rate. However, we did have a few that continued on at the 4 times rate. In 2012, we took a look at the 4 times rate because we still had some people at that rate, and we were trying to get these people on the program. That was the intention. It was always to ensure that everybody was metered and following the protocol of the town. So in 2012, we did take a look at the 4 times penalty rate, and because we still had several people on that rate, we thought, okay, we need to look at it and see how we can get people in, and B, make sure that it's still, the idea of the rate was never to cause any undue hardship, essentially. But at this point, after 4 years of being on it, of course, those bills were climbing. And then in this particular situation, when payments weren't being applied, of course, interest applied to whatever that penalty rate was. So the council at the time, in 2012, staff brought forward a reduced 4 times metered rate to try and reduce the hardship that it caused to I believe there was 5 properties left at that point out of the 10,000 meters we had, to try and help reduce the hardship or the economic conditions that were applied, and also to move the metering program along to make sure people would get that meter when they were supposed to. So in this particular case, at that time, the adjustment that was created on the account was just over $22,000. So the new 4 times rate provided an adjustment to all properties that had greater than 3 units in their care. So this particular property actually has 8 units, I believe, 8 or 9, 8, and because they qualified for the new reduced rate, we went back and made an adjustment of $22,000 at that time, which also included writing off the interest that had accumulated up to that point on the previously 4 times metered rate. So at that point, essentially, we did provide the adjustments and then requested that the property owners come in and make payment arrangements. On several occasions, we did try to contact Mr. Bain. Through email, through telephone calls. We started to have discussions, and essentially nothing ever was resolved at that point. The reason why it was then tax rolled was we did not, essentially, we came back to council to say, here is the amount that's outstanding on the water account. Normally what would occur is that a water shutoff would happen. However, because there were a number of units in this situation, we wanted to put forth to council that we should tax roll it and allow the property owner to continue to pay their water bills, but we would still essentially collect these past billings. It would just be through the tax roll instead. So that occurred in 2014. So that's sort of the background on this particular account.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
Just if I may, Madam Chair, just ask the treasurer just to elaborate in terms of the efforts that were made to try to contact the property owner over this period of time, starting from when the metering program commenced and through the 2 times, 4 times, et cetera, all through this period of time.
Okay. So I started in 2011, and I know this particular unit was one of the properties that we did key in on and try and get the particular property owner to come in and meter. So there were several throughout the years. Every year we did and have phone conversations, emails. We sent letters trying to encourage the property owner to come in and meter the property. So I know from the standpoint of 2011 on, this was an ongoing situation where we reached out to try and get the metering to get them in the metering program, and also to discuss the payment arrangement as well. Prior to that, the metering program itself was very well communicated. There were radio ads, it was in the newspaper, it came out in their water bills, their tax bills, and on a continual basis. It wasn't something that, it was a week before the meters started. It was well in advance of the metering program actually happening. In addition to that, after the 4 times meter rate kicked in, and again, letters and communication was still coming out about the 4 times meter rate. On the bill, there was a giant pink sticker that said, you're a 4 times penalty rate. Please contact town staff to install the meter, so that they could get out of it. So certainly, from staff's point of view, we very well communicated, first off, that the metering program was coming. Second, that if you didn't meter, there would be a penalty as part of that. And thirdly, with each particular property owner that remained in the 4 times penalty program, that they were there and that we were requesting that they get metered. This particular property, the metering program began in April of 2009. This property was metered in January of 2013.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Monica. So Monica, the original date to start the metering or installing meters was 2009.
April 2009.
And the meter on this particular property was not installed until?
January of 2013.
So the only thing that had to be done is, that, if I'm understanding this correctly, in order to avoid the 2-time or the 4-time penalty, was to simply install the meter.
That's right.
And the cost of the meter?
I believe actually the meter, the first meters were provided, but I think in this situation it's a 2-inch meter, and I don't know off the top of my head what a 2-inch meter was, but I think it's about $1,000. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. So we got to 4 times because we simply just didn't install the meter.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Question to our treasurer. Through the water bill, if you don't pay your water bill, is the only recourse that they can cut your water off?
If I may, no, we do both. We turn your water off and we tax roll the remaining balance. So essentially, the municipality has the right to take your water arrears and attach them to your tax roll. So provided that if you do sell the property, we still collect the water bill. So you have two sort of situations. The water is shut off and you have to pay the remaining balance on the taxes. In this situation, because there was a large number of people who would be impacted, we brought it forward to council so that they could review it and propose that we try first to tax roll, and then if we weren't seeing any payment on the water side, then we would turn the water off.
Okay, so Mayor Smith?
Thank you. Madam Treasurer, can you just explain this adjustment of $22,318 again?
I can. So originally, the 4 times penalty rate was based on the flat rate that was provided times 4. So that was what the penalty rate was, essentially. Every 2 months, you would receive what the previous flat rate was at a multiple of 4. Now, for individuals that had multiple units, that applied across the multiple units as well. So for example, and I'm reaching back into some cobwebs here, in this situation, essentially, for 16 Petrini Drive, that penalty rate was at, I think, were all his units at a single unit rate, or were they at half a unit? So I think they were half a unit. So there's a little intricacy, but we'll say essentially his 4 times penalty rate, because he had multiple units, ended up at being at 16 times a penalty rate. So what we said was, okay, this is getting beyond. The expectation again was that be 1 or 2 billing periods, and people would go, whoop, I don't want that, I'm gonna hop on the metering program. So instead what we did was we said, if we look at the annual average consumption rate of each unit, which we say is about 193 at that time, we take the base rate for their meter. So if you look at the top 2 lines, you'll see on an annual basis, the expectation would be that in normal times, their normal metered rate would be $2,300, which essentially is about where they are at today. And we looked at it and said, really, we should apply the 4 times penalty rate on what the metered rate is rather than what the previous flat rate was, in order to lessen the economic pressure or impact, because essentially, remember, at the flat rate, he was paying 16 times if you looked at the fact that they had 4 units. I know there's 8, but we consider them half a unit. There's all kinds of stuff around that. So essentially, he was paying 16 times. So we said, that doesn't really make sense. Let's say it is a 4 times penalty rate, so we're going 4 times the metered rate. There wasn't the availability to do that at the beginning because we had no idea what people were using until we had some history on the number of years that we had at this point. So in applying the 4 times metered rate versus the old penalty rate, essentially the 22,000 was the difference between those 2 rates. And this was not the only property we did do this for. There were about 6 or 7 that ended up in this situation, and we did apply. Not that they hadn't continued to meter necessarily, but if we did apply it and they were of multiple units, so again, over that 3-unit threshold, then we looked at their rates that we did charge them all the way back to the beginning and made adjustments to everybody's account for this situation. So everybody, in fairness, got the exact same adjustment depending on the number of units they had.
Councillor Blanchet?
Thank you, Chair. So all the remaining 6 or 7, all of those issues have been resolved, and
They're all done, yes.
Through you, would this be the first property that's going to tax sale because of water arrears? Or is there more than water arrears? Because the amount weren't quite adding up unless it's just interest on interest.
So first, we don't compound interest, so interest is applied on the balance only. Certainly, I don't know for sure that they would be the only property that ever got into a tax sale position because of a water balance. It would be difficult for us to know that, because the balance to us now is taxes. But in terms of what his tax amount would be, if the water was not on there, he would not be in a tax sale position. Just to be clear, on this particular property, that is true. So he would not be.
Okay.
If he did not owe the water.
Okay. So his options at this point are to pay the entire amount, to set up a payment plan with,
A payment plan.
or we will sell it. What's the difference between tax sale? At what point can we say, okay, we're going to take the property and sell it?
So tax sale process takes about 1.5 years in its entirety prior to the sale of the property. So there are lots of steps that happen prior to us moving to that last step.
So the payment plan is the key here that needs to be.
The payment plan is the key,
To
yes,
prevent. Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, I will read the motion. Moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Councillor Smith. Resolved that the General Government Services Section of Coordinated Committee does hereby recommend to Council that they authorize Treasury to remain consistent with past practice and not grant relief for interest and penalties to 16 Bacini Drive.
Thank you,
Sorry?
ma'am.
Sorry, Madam
One hand?
Chair,
Yes,
if I
ma'am.
may, just a question. So if a payment arrangement is made, does the interest stop?
No, interest does not stop.
So it continues?
It continues, yes.
Could
Thank
that
you,
be
Madam Chair.
negotiated into a payment plan?
No, essentially interest does not stop. It's on a tax roll. We continue to apply interest. If we were negotiating to do that, of course, we would have 18,000 residents that, or say half of those residents that may have a balance on their property account requesting the same. So it would be virtually impossible to do that.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger,
in favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi,
In favor?
Councillor Ego,
In favor.
Councillor Smith,
In favor.
Mayor Smith,
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell,
Favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Oh, it has.
Yes, the last item that was pulled was accounts. I just had a couple of really quick questions. Did you get them, Madam Treasurer? Because I don't want to put you on the spot. If not, I'll just ask you offline afterwards.
Did you send me an email? I didn't
I
see
did
an
because
email.
I wasn't sure where to send it.
Oh.
So I apologize.
No, I didn't know the account, sorry.
Okay, so I can just follow up with you after. I
Sure.
don't think there was anything in there that was life altering.
Okay,
So.
okay.
Okay, so then I will read that motion if I can find it. Moved by Councillor Stockwell, seconded by Mayor Smith. Resolved that February 1st, 28th, 2017 accounts are reviewed by General Government Services Section. The coordinated committee are hereby confirmed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi,
In favor?
Councillor Ego,
In favor?
Councillor Smith,
In favor.
Mayor Smith,
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell,
Favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. There are no other matters. The date of our next meeting is April 13th, 2017. We will break for a brief 5 to 10 minute break, and then we'll resume with the public meeting that's scheduled